Echo 5, do you copy? Echo 5.
Echo 2, good morning. Nice of you to drop by.
Feeling alright, sir? Thought we lost you.
Right now, I feel like I can take on this whole podcast myself.
I know what you mean. Ready to send that transmission to Echo Base?
Yes, sir. R10, patch through.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Hoth Transmissions. Today we are going to be discussing Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 6. And very different from what we've been getting in the past. We actually get to see a very colorful society inside a dome with special guests Jack Black and Lizzo, who very interesting. But we'll get into that later, because I think the way that they opened this episode was really cool. A little bit of cheesy Romeo and Juliet love story thing going on here, but it kind of accelerates a little bit more backstory on some of the alien characters and some of the other cultures in the galaxy. And because the Quarant and the Mon Calamari, they live on the same planet, but they have a lifetime of rivalry that's been going on. So it's kind of a nice way for them to introduce Axe Woves and the crew back into the series by giving us a little bit of a kind of more culture in some of the other aliens. I don't know if you guys kind of enjoyed that or not, but I did find it really cheesy, the love story thing, but I mean, it worked.
Complete left field, the whole cheesy romance side of things. I was not expecting it, but at the same time, it was good to see because we got that different dynamic. It's not just humanoids that fall in love, i.e. Anakin and Padme. This is, two
it's interspecies
aliens. It while it was cheesy, it did bring a smile to my face. And also, that is Tom Holland's brother.
Yep.
Oh, the one that was playing the Mon Calamari?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that. That's actually really cool. But I do think that this whole interaction with these characters, it wasn't what I was expecting the episode to be, but it really set the tone for the rest of the episode, because it kind of followed the same kind of cheesiness throughout the rest of it, but also gave a lot of cool stuff with it.
This was another episode from Bryce Dallas Howard, and I think in the second season episode where we see Bo-Katan, there were also Quarren and Mon Calamari. I think she might like especially those species in the Star Wars universe, because
they look kind of cool.
Yeah, at least the 2 times we've seen them, they were both in her episodes, especially.
That makes sense. We need to have her do more episodes, because we do get a lot of aliens and stuff in The Mandalorian than we do a lot of the other projects that we've seen. But I like that she, because it seems like she's like an old school fan, because she's actually pulling characters. She's not making new characters or new alien species. She's going back to the original stuff and kind of bringing more of a familiarity there. So it was really cool to see the aliens that exist, and we're not over expanding on so many different alien races that we get, I want to say, oversaturated with trying to catch up with every single alien that exists. And so I'm glad it kind of brought it back down to the roots here.
And this episode had really a lot of species, especially when we make it to the planet where Lizzo is ruling in.
Plazia 15, I believe it was called.
15. I saw that it means peaceful, but as far as I know, plaisir is in French pleasure or to please someone. So
I think it kind of goes both ways, because when we get introduced to them, it just seemed like they're playing games, they're eating a lot, so it seemed like they were overindulging, or at least pleasure, because we do learn that they don't work. So it's just a very leisurely society where you can give into the pleasures of life and enjoy your time, because the droids are the ones that are doing all the work for them.
It's very Alice in Wonderland-esque when you look at the royals, and I mean, I felt like that entire table full of people, that was also very like the tea party from Alice in Wonderland, and the game
Okay.
they played with the bug thingy, also very Alice in Wonderland. So I felt like there was a lot of nods to that, at least. I especially, though, I have to say this, loved the costume, makeup, and prosthetics in this episode. It looked really, really good. I loved Lizzo's costume, and also the fact that there was this it looked like a butterfly wing, but also like a flower, and everywhere she went, like it would come with her, and when she sat down, it would show up on on top of her chair, so that it would signalize wherever she sat would be the throne. So I really like that touch. It was really cool.
You're talking about like the little hologram thing that was following her.
I don't know if it's a hologram. I thought
It
it was.
it looked like a hologram to me, just from because I was looking at it because I was trying to figure out what it was,
Okay.
and it looked like it was just a hologram of a flower just following her, and it looked very interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was a piece of her costume.
It probably was, but it was more. It could be more like an extension as like a hologram addition to her real costume. That way, when she does sit, it can mold around her, kind of like how you said, wherever she sits, it kind of shows a throne, and so the
Yep.
hologram able to kind of not be in the way if she sits down randomly, and so that could be the function of it.
Could be.
But very interesting, because I didn't really get the whole Alice in Wonderland thing on this one. I see where you went with it, but my first take was, oh, we got some more goofy politicians.
Yeah, for
But that
me,
fits with your perspective.
yeah, for me, the colors, the visuals, I mean, the queen, who is the more powerful one, and then everybody is like, oh, yes, yes, of course, why not? And then the huge party made me think of the tea party. I don't know. Yeah, that's why my
It
mind
works.
there.
Yes,
No, it definitely works.
it is a good analogy. No, I just love the visuals throughout, from start to end of this episode. The visuals, it just hit me in the right places. And Lizzo and Grogu, I want a spin-off of that. Forget Mandalorian. Forget Bo-Katan. I want Lizzo and Grogu. That's what the movie's going to be. It's going to be Lizzo and Grogu.
It was so cute where he flipped onto her arms. It was beautiful. It was so cute.
Yeah, but I felt like that was kind of. I thought it was cool. Don't get me wrong, but I just thought it was completely random, because when it was like, it's like, yeah, he doesn't take to strangers so well, and then Grogu just does a little flip, and it's like, you don't even know this person, Grogu.
I mean,
But
you are right. Completely random. Didn't really fit in with what we know about Grogu so far, but at the same time, so cute. So
yeah, I
adorable.
agree. It just seemed the personality choice there just seemed off key for a minute,
I
but
think
it was more to show that Lizzo's character was more of a, like, if Grogu likes her, then she's not going to be a bad guy. Like, we don't have to re-roll her out as who's going to be the villain of this episode.
that's one thing, and I think it was very on point with his character. Grogu is a hungry baby. He tried to eat an entire pot of frogs, and what the Duchess did was just hold food out, and he was like, "Whoop! I know what I want."
Okay, I missed that part.
I think it was very on point.
Okay, I missed that part. I didn't see the food involved. That changes my mind right there.
Yeah, she
That makes
dangled
sense.
food, and Grogu was like, "Yep, this is my favorite person now."
That is true. He is all about food, so I stand corrected. I bet. But I did like the whole dynamic there, though, because like the whole thing there, because I know a lot of fans were kind of very. I see where they're going, because when I first saw the episode, I was looking at it like, oh, here goes another. Like, this whole season seems like every episode is quest after quest after quest, and it doesn't feel like this season really has its own story, but building up for a lot of other things that's going to happen in other shows. So I think this is kind of like building up the Mandoverse and building up other cultures and conflicts, and also felt a little bit of filler because, as we see at the end, they didn't spend too much time there, which kind of reminds me of the pterodactyl episode where they focus on one thing too much and then give us a little bit of something else that they probably could have given us a little bit more of later. But I still really enjoyed the story that we got here, because you bring in old battle droids, heck yeah, I'm there for it. Clone Wars references and all that, because we get a little bit more. Like I said, I think this whole episode was more about culture and building up story for other things, and that's what I really liked about this episode.
I found, for me, that there was just too many sort of mixed messages within the episode. It didn't detract from the episode because each character had their own message. But like with the inclusion of Christopher Lloyd, who, you know, Back to the Future. I
He kills every role he does, though.
He's kind of that loyalist side. So he's got his own agenda. You've got Mando and Bo-Katan with their own agendas. So each character has their own mindset in this, and the fact that they were very sort of clearly labeled as well speaks quite a lot to the writing and to the direction, because none of it overlapped. It was quite clear that one character was set one way, that Grogu was just being adorable. So for me, it is a weird one, because I mean, that to start with that love story at the beginning, while it does throw you off what the episode's about, it does add a lot of detail as well. The more you think about it and the more you look into it, the more you're like, well, actually, this is now, we know what's going on. We know that Mando and Bo-Katan are working together to let Bo-Katan become who she should be.
Yeah, to get her sleep back, and I kind of liked it too, because you get Axe Wolves who's coming. It's like, okay, we're here to take Sam Holland's character back to his people, and they're like, okay, well, this is an act of war, and then he's like, no, we're mercenaries. We've been hired by other people, so there's nothing you can do to change our minds. Like, call it act of war or not, but you're not at war with us. You're at war with whoever hired us.
I really enjoyed that separation between the storylines, to be fair. Sorry I cut you, but
Oh, no, you're fine.
I really enjoyed there was a very distinct story. Normally I am a bit, I don't know why, but it takes me a bit longer to understand the distinct storylines in things like this. But for me, in this one, it was like storyline A, the separatist situation, storyline B, Mandalorian as mercenaries. So it was, for me, much easier to follow the thread of what is going through, what's going on, and how it will follow up.
But I do have to agree. I do like how they separated the stories, and I do like how they wrote these characters to be very obvious, but not obvious. Because Christopher Lloyd's character, most of the time that when he plays the character, he comes off as a little bit grumpy or a little like, let's just say grumpy. I can't think of another word for it.
He's kind of like he always comes across as the lovable, annoyed granddad.
Yes,
like
there you go.
In Back to the Future, he's grumpy but lovable. And people, he grows on the characters within those movies. So yeah, just calling him let's call him a grumpy granddad type character.
There you go. Because by the end of the episode, like, he had a change of heart, and he's like, "I hope I can earn your forgiveness." I'm like, how can you hate this guy? How can you can't? But it's funny that he's willing to help Mando and Bo-Katan, and these guys are completely thrown off because they're here to go see Axe Woves and the Mandalorian group because they've turned into mercenaries. And she's like, okay, well, now the armor has a vision, and it says I'm the key between the two groups or the two sects, and so she's there to try and bring them back, and their ship gets completely controlled. And she's like, well, looks like we're going for a ride. And then walks in and gets stuck on this investigative work. And I've never really seen Mando and Bo-Katan as detectives, but I
What?
actually love their dynamic in this episode a lot.
Me too. I think we see a lot of the team up that they will also make in the future when hopefully ruling Mandalore. Because Din Djarin learned a lot in the past 2 seasons, also with Book of Boba Fett, and he became somehow the diplomat. And he is the one who is using his skills from his previous travels, adventures into actually mediating things. I think it is a great setup for Din Djarin as the right hand of Bo-Katan. Also, episode highlight for me, you had me at battle droids.
Oh,
It
I mean,
was
Yeah,
so
when I heard repurposed battle droids, I was like, here we go, let's go.
yeah.
it was beautiful.
It
I
And
was,
Matthew Wood, I believe, came back to voice the droids.
he did, and just to sort of back on that one line that Fluffy just said, it was so cheesy.
Yeah, it
But
was beautiful.
it worked
Battle droids
so
are
well.
cheesy in general. They're just stupid
They are
in a good
but,
way.
You know, like because the original line, you know, you had me at hello. That's it's been redone so many times, but to hear it in Mandalorian and about battle droids, I was like, come on, let's do this.
Yeah, no, actually, I wrote that down when Din Djarin said that. I was like, all right. I was thinking the same thing. But
It was so cringy, so cheesy, but so beautiful. I was so happy. I was like,
But then when you've got an episode with Lizzo and Jack Black in it, expect cheese.
I didn't know anything about Lizzo before this. I knew Jack Black, and I just thought she was just some random character, random actress that they brought in here, and everybody kept saying Lizzo. I'm like, who's Lizzo?
I have a playlist for you. Wait.
I still haven't heard her music, but I know she's a little bit more influential than just some random actress that's
Can tell you
co-acting with Jack Black.
there is a lot of flute in the soundtrack of this episode, and I'm pretty sure it's actually Lizzo playing it. She is
Fair enough.
great
Does she do
artist.
flute?
Yeah.
Is she like a singer, or is she kind of more like with Lindsay Sterling?
No, she's a singer.
Oh, okay.
But
Because when you're saying like flute, I was thinking because like Lindsay Sterling is like really good with the violin and stuff, so I was like, okay.
But Lizzo
Okay.
does the flute, but she is a singer.
The fact that, you know, Star Wars now has Jack Black in it is one thing. To have Lizzo as well, who was, if I'm right, this was sort of her first main acting gig. I mean,
Okay.
She did her voice in The Simpsons as well afterwards, and played the flute again.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, I think Fluffy is right in that. I'm also 90% sure that the flute being played in this episode was done by Lizzo.
And that's actually really cool that they'd be able to pull like their talents. Like Jack Black, he's an actor. He also sings, but they didn't bring in his singing. But since this is kind of new for her, it's kind of cool to implement her abilities and her skills and talents to kind of liven up the episode, because it kind of becomes more of her theme now.
I love Jack Black. Jack Black is by far the favorite actor and singer of my husband. probably maybe his favorite person.
Tenacious D, let's go.
Yep, exactly. Like, he has seriously considered getting a Tenacious D tattoo. We have the vinyl and everything, whatever. My problem with Jack Black became this, that I cannot separate Jack Black from the roles anymore. The only place I see the role or the character is Kung Fu Panda. Everything
Okay.
else, he's Jack Black. So for me, it was Lizzo. Yeah, she is also a very big personality, but for Jack Black, it was literally Jack Black playing in Star Wars, not the general or whoever.
Captain Bombardier.
Yeah, that was my only thing. I was like, oh, you are too big for a role like this. You are Jack Black. You need to be under a stormtrooper mask, a Mandalorian mask, something. But
Well, see, I mean, that's kind of where it gets hard when you have like big name actors come in and stuff like this, like because they're known for who they are.
Mhm.
Like we've been saying Lizzo's character, Christopher Lloyd's character. We've been saying Jack Black's character. We had like I had to look it up, or even like Harry Holland's character. It's like we couldn't look up couldn't call them by name because we know who they are as their status and kind of who they've set themselves up as these well-known people. Where we can look at Bo-Katan and not say Katie Sackhoff and Din Djarin and Pedro Pascal, even though they are bigger names now, but they've kind of set they're the lead characters, so they've already set that tone and we know who they are as characters. But these ones, like you throw in these like cameos, it's like, yeah, we're not gonna bother learning your character's name because this is who you are to us. So I totally get that.
yeah, it's really difficult, at least for me in the case of Jack Black, to see anyone else. I feel the same with Woody Harrelson. I don't see the characters anymore. When I see Woody Harrelson, I see Woody Harrelson. That's like for these two actors, it's the same thing for me.
See,
I forget Woody Harrelson's character in Solo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
See,
fair.
For me, just sort of digressing, it would be the same if Ryan Reynolds had a part in Star Wars, because that would just be Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds in Star Wars.
Yeah.
See, for me, it would be Deadpool. Deadpool being in Star Wars.
That is basically that is just Ryan Reynolds as a human, though. That's who he is. So,
He is Deadpool.
Yeah. So I think
even the weird one that it did in the Wolverine movie.
Yeah, we don't talk about that as much as we don't talk about the sequel trilogy.
Oh, Ryan Reynolds did in the first Deadpool movie, which was hilarious.
We should have a list of things that we will not be talking about.
No, I mean it's fun digression. Like when I listen to it, if I don't think it works, I'll usually like kind of cut. It's like, oh, this is a cool conversation, but I don't think it flows. But
I think with Jack Black's character, yes, it's Jack Black playing Jack Black in Star Wars, but because it's not a main character in more than one episode, I'm perfectly fine with it. I can just sit back and just get lost in the episode and just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah.
Which,
it still works. Definitely.
For me, it was very much like a filler episode, but it was a good filler episode. It was one that you don't necessarily need to watch because there's not much actual progression as such, but what we do get
until the end,
yeah. But what we do get is a bloody good episode. That's the visuals and everything. It is just a good episode.
Yeah, because they're like basically telling them, it's like, okay, we're gonna have you guys check out these droids malfunctioning, and in my mind, I'm like, okay, so nobody works here. It's all the droids, but why not use their own droid security force to handle this situation? But I guess droids don't think like humans, even though they come across as very human-like, and especially in this episode with the bartender.
They say it immediately in the beginning, though. The constable droids they're either not that many of them that is not enough, but they say something about it to justify it. They don't just gloss over, but they say something.
Yeah.
Which is the word constable. Is it British?
Yeah.
Say so, right?
I believe
Yeah.
so.
Because I was like, okay. I
I
did
was just
not
say, yeah,
expect.
ask the British guy.
You mean the British guy that was drinking tea out of a Doctor Who mug? Yes, it is British.
That is the most British thing you've ever said.
And done.
Yeah.
So it's I like when they finally get onto the case and they're talking to Commissioner Hellgate. I'm gonna avoid saying the actors' names just for the sake of previous discussion. And I like that he was like that whole grumpy. He's like, oh, he's like, we got this problem. I can't do anything about it. And Bo's like, why don't you just shut them off? He's like, I can't. And that's where we learn about all that if where he's using this as an excuse so he doesn't lose his position, or like he doesn't know what he's doing, but he knows exactly what he's doing. And he's like, nope, you got to go talk to the Ugnaughts because we have a list of droids. Because we shut these guys down, it's going to be very catastrophic to the society because nobody knows how to work or do anything because we're so reliant on these droids. And this utopia would fall if the droids were no longer available to do all the work. And I thought it was very comical watching the security cameras without the droids malfunctioning.
I've seen this episode, I think, 3 times now.
Okay.
And the droid having the hissy fit with the rubbish just gets me every time.
Oh yeah. Same with the battle droid throwing all the clothes out of the suitcase.
Yeah.
What got me was the kitchen droid who started acting like General Grievous. I was like, oh my god, this is giving me PTSD.
Also, first scene in Attack of the Clones, by the way, that was Chef Droid. I believe it was at Dax Structure's.
Yes.
That's a very good point. I think there are a lot of scenes which are reminiscent of the Attack of the Clones in this show, in this episode. I put that in one of my notes. The chase scene, the bar scene, the kitchen droid scene. I think there were at least 3 or 4 scenes that were very much reminiscent of the Attack of the Clones.
Well, I very much agree on that. And I was even thinking, like, in the situation, like, all these droids malfunctioning, going crazy, especially the violent ones. And you hear everybody screaming. I was like, for a Star Wars society, they all should have guns and stuff like this. Maybe not. Oh, no, that's right, because they're disarmed on this place. And that's why Mando and Bo-Katan can have their weapons, is because it's part of their culture. But I was thinking, I'm just like, man, imagine owning a droid and it just starts malfunctioning like this. Like, I would react the same way. Like, holy heck, like complete chaos and scared.
Well, that's very iRobot.
Yeah, very much so. I was even thinking this society kind of gave a Wall-E style. I'm just surprised that everybody wasn't so like overweight as they show in Wall-E.
I thought when Mando started kicking the battle droids, I was like, oh, this is exactly what Will Smith did in iRobot. This is basically the same thing, just with different.
I forgot he did that.
Yeah, he was holding the gun to their heads.
That's right. That is right. And Amanda Din Djarin in this whole episode, he was exactly how he should have been, because from what we know with Din Djarin, he has a history of hating droids. And
I mean,
so
it's a good reason, though.
Yeah, and this is probably just a lot of PTSD for him, because especially with the super battle droids and stuff like that. And after they talk to the Ugnaughts, and the Ugnaughts are completely offended by them saying, "Oh yeah, your droids, they're not working properly." It's like, well, blah blah blah. We don't make mistakes. I've spoken. And So to see Mando go up there, Bo-Katan is just like, "What the heck are you doing? We're trying to talk diplomatically here." And Din Djarin's just sitting there messing with, putting his hand in front of the droids to see if he can get a reaction. And the B1 battle droid just like, "Oh, you shouldn't do that." And he's like, they were first programmed to be war droids, so their innate function should be that. And Mando's like, well, if they've been reprogrammed, this shouldn't bother him. And I just love how he just kept kicking him. And Bo-Katan's like, what are you doing? I just, because him and Bo-Katan clashed this entire episode, and I thought it was funny. But I mean, I think Din Djarin had the better tactic because he got the better results.
I just thought from a different perspective that they complement each other very well in different types of skills and also in leadership and so on. So that's why I thought this team up, at least in this episode, showed us a lot of the potential in the future.
No, I totally agree on that because what I was thinking this episode was, or at least this season, Mando's kind of been kind of the back character. And this one finally brought him back to be equal with Bo-Katan again. Because, yes, they had a lot of disagreements, but they respected each other, even though Bo-Katan didn't like how he was doing things. Because his way got a whole chase scene, and the super battle droid was throwing all these stuff throughout the city. And love that Mando jumped through a window just to tackle the droid. I thought that was pretty cool. But when they do get to the bar scene, she's like, all right, we're doing it my way. And Mando's like, nope, we're still doing it my way.
It was very Anakin Skywalker of him.
Yes, I would say.
Yeah. See, I found the dynamic between Mando and Bo-Katan to be very much like Tony Stark and Steve Rogers.
Yes, okay. I'll go with that.
They're good at working together when they're not fighting each other.
Yeah.
And, each has their own ways of doing things. Both weirdly work out. So I kind of felt like a bit like, it's very Captain America-y, Civil War type, where they're fighting for the same belief. It's just how they go about it is different. And it's the same in this, where, like you said, with Mando sort of prodding the droid. It's like, what are you doing? Why are you being an idiot? And it's like, it just had the parallels for me, at least. I don't know if anybody else picked up on that.
No, it really did. And it also stuck to Mando's character because, like I mentioned, he hates droids. And they made a comment where I forget what it was that it said. I think she said they look suspicious. And it was like, they all look suspicious, which fit on with his personality about, like, he thinks that every droid is suspicious for that reason.
I really enjoyed the end of this droid. How do I say? It's the what?
Debacle.
Yeah, let's call it that. I really enjoyed the fact that we came back to separatists, not Imperials, not anyone, but I mean, okay, Christopher Lloyd's character, because of his age, is also relatively old, so he was like, we see the first sign with the Techno Union, which is something for people like us, like, oh, the Techno Union? Okay, this cannot be anything else than the separatist era, which is beautiful. But I really enjoyed that. And then we heard Count Dooku was a genius and so on. And that was a beautiful payoff moment for me.
Oh, I agree. Like, because I was thinking the whole time, like, he has to be an Imperial, and then he starts speaking, and he's like, nope, I didn't give in to the Republic, and I didn't give in to the Empire, and blah blah blah. And they're like, okay, so you're a separatist. You better believe it. He's like, I don't know why you guys aren't. Like, from his perspective, I could kind of see why, because they all kind of flopped, and we talked about this in previous episodes where I think the Republic is fumbling, or the New Republic is fumbling at this point, and how the Empire probably should still be in control, but obviously they're tyrants, so they shouldn't. But they handled it better than the New Republic, and I think that's kind of where he sees it. It's like, okay, well, from my perspective, the Separatists we had the better ideals than what these new governments coming in are doing, and especially the way that he was thinking with Count Dooku, because I think Count Dooku was actually trying to do good, not in the way that Palpatine was, quote unquote, doing good, because he felt betrayed when Palpatine told Anakin to kill him, and he believed in the whole trial and whatnot. But I just think that he probably thought that these leaders that were technically Imperial, I know he said he didn't give in to the Empire, but I mean, Count Dooku, if he was still in it, he probably would have been the one storming the Jedi Temple with the clones.
Count Dooku should have known. He should have known. There was an apprentice even in the first movie. He should have known he was the one who was going to be just pushed.
There's always
I mean,
a
Darth
bigger
Maul knew.
fish.
There could
Darth Maul
only
knew.
be two. There could only be two. We knew who number one was. We saw 3 different number 2s.
Yeah, Saz Ventress being one of them, at least for Count Dooku.
Exactly. There's even that. Yeah. Savage, Asajj Ventress, Count Dooku, later version of Anakin. They should have all known.
But then, if
Should've
we
been
look
smarter.
at Dooku's character in Attack of the Clones, he was also very much wanting Obi-Wan to sort of side with him, because it to me felt like, Dooku is a Sith Lord. We didn't know that properly at the time, but he kept on sort of playing the double agent almost, and it's the same with it was the same in this episode, where it was very much again the double agent. It was helpful in one respect, but then the truth comes out and it's like, okay, this is who you actually are. Was any of that part that you said previously true? So again, again, it goes back to the Attack of the Clones parallels, and that's another one that you can add to the list.
Because my thing is like, okay, you got this small little dome society. How is you pulling off your separatist shenanigans here going to really affect the galaxy in a whole? Or are you just trying to create your own little bubble of a separatist organization? Either way, the New Republic will notice it if it wasn't for Bo-Katan and Mando. Either way, he was going to get shut down. At least this way, a lot of innocent people aren't being killed because of it.
Yeah, at least it was just one person. If everybody else in that control room also reacted and tried to defend him and everything, it would have been a whole different story. We would have known that was
bloodbath.
Yeah, exactly. But it was just the actions of a singular man. It was not
And
going to.
And the villains need to stop monologuing. They really do. Because Bo-Katan's like, all right, I've had enough of this. You're distracted. I can get my shot right now because I'm quicker than you. It's like, I know you're right next to the kill switch, but yeah, I'm gonna take you out while you're giving us a monologue. I'm done hearing it. Like I said, the Mandalorians are the ones that probably should be running the galaxy at this point. It seems like they're the only ones that really get things done.
Yeah. Yeah, they're patient up until the point where, if you're a bad guy and you start doing the classic movie trope of the monologue, they ain't got time for that. I ain't got time for that.
Yeah.
Just, Mandalorians to rule the galaxy. That's where I'm at.
This is
the
exactly
Mandalorians of the galaxy.
what us to believe, you know that, right? The show is called The Mandalorian. That's just for us to think that we want Mandalorians in charge of everything.
But we know by the time the sequels come, they're not. At least not yet.
There's still time.
There's still time. There's probably still building up. Maybe they're building up to another war. It doesn't seem like that would be what Bo-Katan or Din Djarin would do, but they seem more like protectors.
The last quarter of the episode is basically moving on to the storyline B, which is the overall arc of the season, which is about the Mandalorian. But before we move on there, I did some research and found out something.
Is it about Nepenthe?
Yes. Do you know?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that too. So I'm glad. I was like, no, let's not jump to the next part yet because I still want to talk about that whole bar scene. So I liked when they got to the bar. It was kind of a reminiscent of A New Hope, but opposite, because they get to the cantina at Mos Eisley and they're like, oh, droids, they're not allowed in here. And now we got a whole bar full of droids. And as soon as Mando and Bo walk in, everything, all the music stops, everything just immediately stops, and everybody just starts looking at them. And I love that Bo was like, no, we're doing it my way this time. And Mando still is like, nope, I'm going to threaten this droid. And it's funny that droids have fear because he threatens to pull out his memory chip and go do something. And the droid's like, oh, no, I'll help. And then they become more like the kind of back to the whole Western feel when the sheriff walks in. He's like, all right, this place is locked down. Nobody's allowed to leave until I interrogate everybody. And then that's when this droid spills some information about something that could possibly be the effect of why these droids are malfunctioning. And it's something that Christopher Lloyd's character was a part of.
Yeah, what I researched was, I'm very much into myths and literature.
Especially Greek mythology, yeah.
Exactly.
Don't know. It's never come up.
Not once.
No.
I love Greek mythology too, so me and Fluffy talk a lot. We reference a lot when we see like some type of Greek mythology, and we sit there and jump into it. But she's bigger into mythology because in Ahsoka she knew more about because it wasn't Greek mythology there. That was the two wolves.
Yeah, it was Norse mythology.
Norse mythology. There you go.
Yeah. Skrull and Hati.
And so here we have more Greek mythology being put in here, and the way they did it worked so well.
Exactly. It is not also just mythology, but it's a real plant, and it has taken part in the Greek literature and also in some other pop culture things. So Nepenthe is basically the name of a plant. And
this is what the droids are drinking, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. It's what they're drinking. And basically, you can call it a drug of forgetfulness.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't, in the Greek myth, it is basically told to consume to forget about grief. And when we think about, we just talked about how humanized these droids were. So we are seeing they are drinking to forget their grief in a bar setting with Nepenthe. And what I figured out is that there is also a reference to it in Star Trek, not just in Star Wars.
How dare you?
Also used in Star Trek.
That's not the first time it's going to be mentioned in this episode either. Just
saying. All right. Okay. Just kidding. I love Star Trek, so I'm excited to see what you pull on that. Now that we've kind of like explained about what they're drinking and what Nepenthe is and why these droids would be doing it, because I'm assuming there's like nanos in it that does a whole reprogramming for them to forget and bring them back to a normal setting. And it's just kind of funny because it's a whole working class of droids, and that's what people usually do after work. They go to a bar and drink. So it's just funny how humanized these episodes these droids became in this episode, because they have fear of being replaced. Mando threatens them, so they give into that, and then they're sitting here after a long day's work. They go to the bar to drink. And I found that whole thing comical, and it's very smart and very well written on how they use Nepenthe to kind of tie everything together here. So I love when they bring in Greek mythology because it's very fascinating.
Anything that is not, I mean, we have a lot of made up stuff in this universe, but anything that we actually relate to other media, other things that we have read, we have seen, I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah. And then we get more cheesiness with them turning in Commissioner Hellgate and them getting the key to the dome.
Which is a literal key.
Yeah. And Grogu gets knighted.
Yes.
So maybe that's the only time he gets knighted, but even if though it's not a Jedi Knight.
That's exactly what I wrote in my notes. Knight Grogu, but not Jedi Knight Grogu. This is exactly the phrase I wrote.
And that
Sir Grogu. It just has a better
Sir
ring
Grogu.
to it.
It does. I'm gonna start calling him Sir Grogu from here on out. Every time Grogu is mentioned from now, it's always gonna be Sir Grogu now. And I love that he's becoming a little bit more aware, or they're at least making him a little bit more interactive, because as they're leaving, she's like, bye, and then Grogu sits there and waves back. And this was after what's his face gets exiled, and then also in the little space taxi that they're driving, or that they're in, they're sitting, Bo and Mando are talking, and you see Grogu like looking back and forth as each one is speaking. I thought that was funny. I don't know if you guys saw that or noticed it, but I thought it stood out to me. I thought it was funny. He's becoming more interactive.
No, I have to agree with that. You know, this episode, for me, you know, Grogu, as has both Mandalorian, so Din Djarin, and Bo-Katan, they've all seen one metric ton of war. So this is kind of like a nice sort of respite for them. Yes, they're on a mission, but it's not the same kind of mission that they've been on for, you know, most of their lives, including Grogu, who's had to hide who he is.
I'll say differently, because Bo-Katan was during the Clone Wars, so that was a good portion of her life. So fighting battle droids, probably a normal mission for her that she's not used to doing.
No, that is true, but you know, so for me, it felt like an evolution of each of the characters, and especially Grogu. That, you know, the only life that we've known that he's had is running from the clones at Order 66 to running for his life because he's, you know, trying to be kidnapped, to going on the run basically with Din Djarin. So it felt here that he was more at peace and could be himself. He could be the child, not just this potential unstoppable weapon of enormous cuteness. He is just able to relax.
Because I actually did notice Grogu didn't go with them, so he was being babysat by Lizzo the entire time, which I find funny that Mando lets anybody just babysit him without even knowing them.
I think he also inherently trusts him to be able to defend himself.
I probably at this point now, yeah, because he is a little bit stronger with the Force and stuff, especially after the training episode with
he's a foundling.
The foundling, yeah. Because he proved himself there. It's like he held back, but once he was given the okay, he's like, okay, this is what I can do. Here we go. And I'm not saying Lizzo's character would make him do that, but
she just made him cheat in the cricket-like game. That's it.
I forgot about that. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. Like I said, like this episode was very off key and felt like another filler episode, up until we get to this point of their actual mission of coming to Plazia 15. And I like that Bo is Mando's like, okay, so what's your plan? She's like, I don't know. I'll figure it out when I get there. And I was like, all right, Bo, let's see how this goes. And I think deep down she already knew she was going to challenge him.
I mean, that's the only thing that they were going to respect. We knew that from the get-go.
That's just their culture.
Exactly. There had to be a trial by combat, whatever.
Yeah.
It was amazing, though. We have to talk about that in detail. That fight sequence.
Oh, we will. The cup also that Axe was drinking out of. I saw it on Instagram. Someone said that exact cup you can find on Amazon for $20.
What? I missed that part. What cup was that?
When he's first introduced, he's got the silver cup he's drinking out of. Someone went and looked for it because we do know that they use a lot of like real life props and stuff. So this one wasn't made specifically for the show. This was bought just off of Amazon.
Okay.
I'm thinking of buying it just because it is kind of a cool cup. Like, go back and watch it. It's pretty cool. It's like this little silver cup, like a little mug.
I'll take a look.
But I did like that she's like, okay, these aren't my people. And they kind of give a lot of explanation here because I was very confused at the start of the season when Bo was away from her people, this fleet that she built, and now Axe Woves is in charge of it. But Mando has the Darksaber, so why aren't they following him? Those were like my biggest questions this whole season, and they got answered at the end of this fight. But the whole fight scene leading up to it, all this information, I thought it was worthy of a Mandalorian fight. Like, we get to see their skills a little bit more because we get to see Din Djarin fight, but he's a little more clunky. These guys were a little bit more agile.
Yeah, they were definitely refined, and I mean, it goes to show that comparing sort of the other Mandalorians, including Bo-Katan, to Din Djarin, it's a completely different upbringing that they've had. You know, it's again sort of throwing Grogu or Sir Grogu in there as well. You know, his Jedi training stopped, but if it had carried on, he would be like Yoda levels. And it's the same with Din Djarin. If he was properly trained by Mandalorians fully, you know, from sort of birth onwards, he
just
would be
a different style than the Death Watch style.
Yeah.
We should remember that, for example, for Din Djarin, he earned the armor that he's wearing piece by piece. That is also something we should be very much aware of. The other Mandalorian that we know of, especially the Night Owls and so on, they were in Mandalore.
Right.
They were in the source of where Beskar was. But for Din Djarin,
they grew up with it.
Armor was earned, and even that changes a lot of things. Even thinking about, like, I mean, the weight of Beskar armor versus another type of armor, that might change a lot of things. The way that you use your flamethrower, if you have a shield, if you have a jetpack. So, and we know that for
that is true.
Things were not just from the get-go there, but for Bo-Katan,
that's right. He started with a different armor.
Definitely, exactly. Bo-Katan, who was the sister of the Duchess, who was from the royal family, she probably had everything at her disposal.
Since being a child. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of the same thing with the Darksaber, because she's a little bit more attuned with it than Din Djarin is as well, because he's a little bit more clunky with it too because of the weight.
Yeah,
and
but
so
she had a bit more time with it too.
100%, yeah. That's why I think she's easier. That's why I'm comparing it to the armor, because she's had more time with the armor, like she did with the Darksaber. So she's able to move. So I'll roll with that. But some of her moves while she's fighting Axe, like when he threw her up onto the ship and they're fighting on top of the ship, he punches her off the ship. She uses her little whip and pulls him down with her. Like
that was just chef's kiss.
And it just seems like she knew exactly what she was doing in the fight. She knew if it's kind of like somebody that knows the moves. Like if she's had a lot of training, like, okay, this happens, this is how I'll react. Like she seemed to always know how to react to each blow that Axe gave to her. And especially when she pins him down and she like tells him to yield. I love that he's like, all right, fine, but he's the one with the darksaber. Why are you challenging me? And I was like, that's kind of. And now I see why they didn't respect Bo, and why she kind of got exiled in a sense, because he states Din Djarin doesn't have a single ounce of blood of Mando blood in him, so they're not going to follow him. And they're not going to follow her because she was too much of a coward to challenge him for the darksaber. And so, to me, that kind of made a lot of sense of why Mando wasn't leading them and why Bo wasn't leading them, because they just didn't respect either of them after that. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I was happily just listening to your thoughts on it. Got lost in my own little world. I mean,
You're fine.
The fight for me, it was like watching a well choreographed ballet. You know, that Bo-Katan's moves were so fluid, and anticipating the next move before it was like ballet mixed with chess. The way that they were moving, and Bo-Katan was literally just being able to. I mean, yeah, she got hit a couple of times, but who doesn't? But it felt fluid. It didn't feel clunky, and then the reasonings behind why the other Mandalorians haven't followed her. I got to agree with Fluffy on this one. It's just one thing I will say though, very quickly before I lose my track of thought completely, is the fight lasted the perfect amount of time. It wasn't drawn out. Again, to use that sort of Captain America Civil War parallel, that fight in that movie, way too long.
Mm-hmm.
This one, perfect. And what an ending to the episode. You had the beginning of the episode, which was the love story. Now we're at the end. We're at the sort of climax to the beginning of the end of the story, and
tying everything in.
What an ending! Like, it makes the other episodes that we've had, the more poorly received episodes, because I'm being very careful with my words, it fits everything in fully and with a nice little bow.
Yeah.
I think what we see here is how Bo-Katan is literally the superior warrior. The way that she fights, her mind for the entire fight. It's not just her force behind it, because probably Axel Wiles would overpower her when we look at it, but the strategic planning and things that she did, especially with that hook when they were on top of the ship and everything, that was a beautiful scene to watch. So I am 100% with you on that, Sam. It's like a beautiful ballet chess mix of a beautiful fight. I really, really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the length of it as well, because after a while, exactly like you said, I mean, okay, Civil War, 2 super soldiers versus Iron Man, okay, but it might have lost its realistic touch if it was a tad bit longer, but I think it was the perfect amount of fighting, and it was something that I looked forward to. What I want to talk about next is the way that the Darksaber was passed from Din Djarin to Bo-Katan, which was the exact same way the Elder Wand was passed from
Harry Potter. I swear, this season we've gone from Lord of the Rings, Star Trek, Harry Potter, ballet and chess.
Exactly. From Dumbledore
Romeo and Juliet, Greek
Malfoy
mythology. So many ties. Love it.
to Harry. It was the perfect parallel for the Elder Wand.
I didn't even think about that, but you're right. Because I liked how he's like, okay, you guys don't respect her because she doesn't have the Darksaber? all right, well, I'm just gonna give it to you. She's like, no, you can't just give it to me. I don't care your intentions. She's like, no, I'm not just gonna give it to you. Let me talk to everybody and let me see if the way I'm thinking is right.
It was not done well in the movies in Harry Potter, but in
Definitely
the
in
book,
the books.
Yeah.
really well explained.
Yeah, a lot. Digressing a little bit here, but yeah, a lot of people look at the movies of Harry Potter and it's like, okay, I mean, it was good, but they didn't really explain it. I'm like, read the books. Always got to read the books to really understand. But since we don't have any like book form here, we just had a lot of what we thought were filler episodes up until this point, because Mando going down on Mandalorian to check it out. Okay, he gets defeated, and this blade is taken away from him because it's not on him. And then she comes down and defeats his captor. And I was like, he had to ask the question twice. He's like, this is what happened. So you tell me, does it belong to her or not? Because I'll give it to her now if you guys deem it worthy of her. If not, then I'll keep it until she does something about it.
I mean, it's not. We have been saying this a lot. Like the episodes filler, they don't make a lot of sense in the overall arc, at least until this point that we're in the season. But we see an overall arc for the entirety of the Mandalorian, and then we see the arc for Bo-Katan. We see the arc for Din Djarin. We see the arc for Grogu as the foundling, and we also see a tiny arc for the Darksaber and who.
And the Ark of the Covenant. No, I'm kidding. I had to get some Indiana Jones there.
I get that reference.
You were just saying Ark a lot. I had to. Forgive me.
You're the one who's gonna edit this.
Anyways.
I forgive you.
Oh, 100%.
Again, you know, that bit for me, giving the Darksaber over to Bo-Katan, it felt very much again, and I know I've said it a lot in other episodes, but it was the Return of the King Aragorn moment for me. That was it. That's what it culminated to, and the way it was done was perfect.
Andoril has been returned.
Yeah.
I still think it's a perfect parallel to the Elder Wand, but Return of the King.
Better.
I mean,
well, no, I mean, I think it fits both, because the Elder Wand, the way that it was given back to her, was definitely the Elder Wand, but it always belonged to her in the beginning. She just had to earn it, just like Aragorn had to earn Andoril being reforged to be given back to him.
She is not yet on the throne of Mandalore, and I will be petty.
That's fair. Okay, that's fair. I'm still waiting for Sam's Star Trek reference.
I was gonna wait till the end. I'm happy. I'm happy to wait.
Okay. But I liked how they ended it with her taking the lightsaber or the Darksaber and just turning it on, and then just having that panoramic moment and then just cutting to a black screen.
I have this as a note in all caps: Darksaber ignition. That's it. That's the thing.
That's awesome.
Again, the visuals of that was just, apart from using the word perfect, there's no other words for it. You know, it is what it is, but in the best way possible. You didn't need anything after that. You just needed the Darksaber in its rightful owner's hands, being ignited. Perfect place to stop the episode.
I mean, we have known this for so long. This has not just anything to do with the Mandalorian, but everything we've seen in the Clone Wars since Duchess Satine died. that Bo-Katan should take the throne of Mandalore. So it's so many years of build-up. We haven't reached the end yet. Even
Because
with
even Sabine was trying to give her the throne.
exactly. So that moment was just goosebumps for me. The Darksaber ignition in Bo-Katan's hands, because we see with Din Djarin, he is having a hard time with the Darksaber. The weight of it, the way he carries it, something is off there. But in Bo-Katan's hands, it's just perfection.
And this is what I also liked about it, because Bo-Katan has known Axe Woves and the crew for the longer time. But when she ignites the Darksaber, who's the one standing next to her? It's not Axe Woves, it's Din Djarin. And I loved that he kind of had an iconic moment standing next to her, like, okay, we're doing this together. Like, okay, I'm handing this to you now. You're igniting it. I'm standing at your right hand.
What I was saying about him showing his character in this episode. He is the perfect complement to her in the things that she is weaker at. Din Djarin is a perfect complement to her character, her leadership. It is just, I think this is in this storyline B where we see the Mandalorian arc is just perfect.
Yeah, because I remember at the end of season 2, I was speculating because Din Djarin had the Darksaber, and I was like, okay, so there's only 2 ways this is going to work. Bo-Katan is going to challenge him, or he's going to lead Mandalore, and she's going to be his right-hand person. But I knew from the start that those 2 would be side by side, standing to basically bring the Mandalorians back to their people. And the roles got reversed for what I was predicting, but it still works.
Definitely yin and yang type thing again, which, as you know, we talk
Crosshair
about
and Omega.
Yeah. But again, it's that same parallel, but with different characters and different reasons and meanings behind it. So you've got in Bo-Katan, you've got the strong leader that's waiting to be, to become the leader, and in Din Djarin, you've got the strong supporter that wants to do the right thing, and combine them, and they become one perfect pair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should always remember the fact that Din Djarin never wants to be the person who is at least in charge of so many people, but be the one to lead. And then Bo-Katan was born to lead, but it was taken away from her somehow. So it's just, they are a perfect dyad. Let's go back to the
I mean, he's just trying to be a humble bounty hunter raising Sir Grogu.
I mean,
That's his character.
Do you think that Din Djarin's so? I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this. It's not that he's eager to give up the power because he never wanted the power, but do you think he's so eager to follow Bo-Katan because he's very much at the point of, like you say, wanting to just go back to who he was? He's kind of like fed up of
He's changed.
fighting. Yeah.
I think he doesn't want to follow. I think he just thinks that this is his responsibility to do this, and then he can just take off whenever he wants to.
And I kind of see it this way too. Like, he started off as this bounty hunter because I'm not exactly sure what to call their cult. I'm just going to say Death Watch because I know it gets explained later that they're not Death Watch. And so their little Death Watch group of mercenaries, they became bounty hunters because they were trying to survive, make money in order to keep basically just survival. And then now that Bo-Katan's in the mixture, even the armor is respecting Bo-Katan because she basically named her. It's like, no, she's the bridge between both our groups. So she's allowed to take the helmet off because she's the middle. And so I think it's not only Din Djarin that's changing or evolving, it's also the group that he's with, because we're going to see them kind of coalesce, but there's going to probably be some confrontation there. But ultimately, you know that they're going to become one. And I think Din Djarin is noticing that as well, because he's very observant. And especially if the armor is saying this, he's going to back the armor. But yeah, so overall, great episode.
Yeah, and now it's time for Sam's
For-
tie-ins.
Yeah, let's hear this tie-in.
So there's a couple of Star Trek references, as such. They're not like mainstream references, but they are there. The initial scenes of as they're going into the main city, the main plaza, are very reminiscent of Star Trek Beyond when the Enterprise is going into the space station. The way that the shots, it runs in parallel with how that looks. Christopher Lloyd was also in Star Trek. He played a Klingon. Star Trek 3.
Interesting. Okay.
Which was then also featured in a roundabout sort of way to get us back onto Star Wars. In Back to the Future, Marty McFly, played by Michael J. Fox, introduced himself as Darth Vader from the planet Vulcan, which is both of them
interesting.
put together.
That just sounds so funny. Darth Vader from planet Vulcan.
I mean, the fact he does that as well, you know.
Yeah, that hurts me. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Can you imagine Darth Vader with his like gloved hands?
I don't know. I just know I love like the movie fanboys. They established a huge rivalry between Star Trek and Star Wars. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've seen that movie.
Yeah.
If you haven't, I highly recommend it. One of the best Star Wars movies that you can see, at least parodies. Like I watch that movie at least once every few months.
Another reference, but this time to Star Tours, is the pilot droid from that is in the bar scene.
Yeah, I wrote that down in my notes, and I forgot to mention that when we were discussing the bar scene. Because there's a lot of different droids from a lot of the different movies that you got to see in this whole bar scene, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Because you get gonk droids, battle droids, a lot of protocol droids, and astromechs as well. And then the chef droid again is seen there. And also, Bryce Dallas Howard's husband actually voiced the bartender droid.
Yeah, and the other connection to Bryce Dallas Howard is her.
This
her
is the
dad,
Easter egg drop.
Ron Howard directed Solo.
Yeah.
So you know she comes from a Star Wars lineage now.
Not only that, because that's kind of what Ron Howard's thing is. He always has his brother like a character in all his movies, and so I'm wondering if Bryce Dallas Howard is kind of going upon the same like style. It's like I wonder if her husband's going to be in more things just because that's going to be her staple, like Ron Howard's brother is.
I mean, this is a whole other discussion with nepo babies and so on, but yeah, I think this is one of the reasons why she was also picked out for the team of directors for The Mandalorian, because she has a lot of experience from her father.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you guys for listening. We will be back next week to cover episode 7, and we're going to kind of see exactly how these two Mandalorian groups become whole. And we'll see a little bit of confrontation. It's going to be a lot of fun. But before we go, make sure that you check down in the description below where we have our link tree, where you can check out all of our merch, which we have entertainmentearth.com, where we have tons of Black Series stuff. If you like t-shirts, we have some cool shirts that we've designed. And hopefully we're going to have some new designs coming out soon. Also, check out our Instagram and our Discord so you can check out our fun Star Wars communities and be able to talk with other fans just like you. So we'll catch you guys next week. May the Force
Be with you.
Always.